Executives of the big four electricity companies head into a big meeting with the Energy Minister today, probably their last catch-up before the government announces its much-hyped electricity market reforms. That's happening by the end of this month. Simon Watts is the Energy and Climate Minister, joins us this morning. Minister, good morning.
Very good morning, Ryan.
Good to have you here. You've put them on notice back in February, saying that these guys, you've made it clear to them they need to play their part to keep the lights on. Have they done that?
Well, look, my major priority is ensuring that Kiwis get a good deal, and the conversations today with the energy companies primarily are focused around, have we got energy security to keep the lights on, and have we got affordable energy being delivered to New Zealand consumers? Came into this job at the beginning of the year with a lot of volatility in the energy market. Prime Minister said to me, Minister, you need to make sure that those lights stay on this winter. We've done that. We've got energy security in 2025, but my focus is very much on 2026 and beyond. That'll be the conversations this afternoon.
And 26 is looking like a crunch, right?
26 is looking tight. It's still a bit dry at the moment, but at the end of the day, one of the major issues that we came in last year is that we didn't have enough fuel for the eventuality when we had a dry year. That was for the market to have prepared itself. It didn't, and that wasn't acceptable. So they've taken steps to get that on the right track, but I'm still wanting to see more work next year to make sure that we have the appropriate fuel to be able to deal with a scenario where we have a dry year.
In addition to the coal?
That has a major impact on price.
In addition to the coal deal that they've done? Okay, all right.
Look, the reality is we need as many options in the mix as possible, Ryan. Because the more options, the cheaper the energy prices, and we definitely want to see cheaper energy prices.
Speaking of options, can you rule out this idea that Shane Jones is floating around that we should renationalise our gentailers?
Yeah, look, Ryan, we're not going to be renationalising. That didn't work under the prior model in the 90s. I think most Kiwis would recognise that we've moved on from the old days of government building every house in this country, government building everything. We've got a market-enabled model. The review that we're undertaking at the moment looks at why the market failed primarily last year and the year before. Why aren't we getting as affordable energy prices as we need to? And what fixes do we need to do to make sure we have that going forward? That's the focus of the work we're working through.
And does that fix potentially include breaking up the generation from the retail arms, or are you happy to rule that out too?
Look, going into this process, I've said that all options are on the table. I wanted to make sure that we are considering all scenarios, but I've also been pretty clear that we're going to be laser focused and make surgical changes in the areas of the market that did not work and have not worked. And I think that's important because the New Zealand energy market actually is a market-enabled model. We don't have government subsidies going in. It's a pure market, but there are some problems with it, and we need to fix those.
Is one of those problems the fact that they are one and the same, the gen and the tailor?
Well, look, it's one of the areas that the review more broadly has assessed. I'm not going to go into the outcomes and the findings of all of the problems and opportunities. We will be doing that before the end of this month, so not too long to wait.
And let me put it this way.
Working through that at the moment.
Let me put it this way to make it clear for our viewers at home. You went into this and all options were on the table. Now you have ruled out renationalising, as Shane Jones has suggested. Can you also say that at this stage of the process, you're also ruling out splitting up the gen from the tailor? There'll be tweaks, but there won't be that more hardcore option.
Look, I'm not going to be ruling anything else out at this point. In a couple of weeks, we'll know where we are on that.
Okay. When you talked about, and you come out, the Electricity Authority did a couple of weeks ago now, and said that the gentailers have to offer those smaller players the same price or the same deal that they would offer their own retail arms. We had an expert out of Griffith University, which I thought was quite interesting, come out and say, hang on a minute, why would they do that? Why would they want to do that? They will just charge themselves more and keep charging the others the same. The net effect of this change that you guys are bringing in will mean actually higher prices for us.
No, that's not the case. That type of scenario that you've outlined is anti-competitive. We've got the Commerce Commission, which is a regulator, which would be all over that, and that is
all over it. How would they know? How would they know?
Well, they the ComCom have their information gathering powers, pretty significant powers, to be able to gather any information required in order to inform and evidence such as a scenario that you've just outlined. But what we've said clearly is New Zealand consumers need to get a good deal on their power prices. We want to make sure that those big gentailers, they operate 90% of the market, Ryan, so we need to make sure that their conduct and the way in which they operate is appropriate, and that's what the regulators do. And those changes we outlined mean that they do need to offer the prices that they do offer themselves to other independents, and that's good for competition because we want more competition in the New Zealand energy market.
How much of their profits go to new generation versus, dividends for shareholders?
Oh, look, I haven't. It depends on each of the companies. They've all got a different mix in terms of their financial results. You've seen that this year as well. You can't. They are all quite different. The reality is that we do have a pretty significant forward pipeline of new generation, but quite a lot of that new generation actually, Ryan, is coming from independent players, not the four gentailers. That's positive because we want other players to come into the market.
Well, what about this argument? If you were to split up the gen from the tailer, that you would then reduce their profitability, you then reduce their ability to invest in new generation?
Well, look, that's a scenario, and a rational consideration as part of that. What I'm looking at is what didn't work in the market last year, and what do we need to fix as a result of that. And we know last year, primarily, we didn't have enough fuel to keep the lights on when we didn't have the rain, when the wind wasn't blowing and the sun wasn't shining. And the market should have prepared itself for that scenario, and it didn't. And so the challenge is making sure that we've got a model that deals with that, because if you haven't got uncertainty, you have more stable prices, and more stable prices mean a better deal for New Zealand consumers on their energy bills, and that's what we want as a government.
Minister, another ETS auction flop?
It's not a flop, Ryan. I've had this conversation before. Well, the reality is that the market is clearing and the demand is being satisfied by what is referred to as a secondary market. It is not a failed auction. It is the way in which the market is meant to operate. It's a demand and supply equation, and that's how it works.
This idea of a rates cap, the warnings, some of your advice that we have seen, Business Desk has got their hands on, some of the advice says, actually, you cap the rates, you increase the cost of borrowing. That's going to eventually lead to a situation where someone's going to be paying more.
Well, first and foremost, I haven't received any advice on rates capping yet, so I'm not sure where you're quoting that from. But the point is that we are working through detailed policy at the moment. I'm getting a lot of feedback and learning for how it's worked in other jurisdictions, including Australia. We need to make sure that rates increases are sustainable and affordable for New Zealand ratepayers. We've had a number of examples where we've seen 20% increases in rates year on year. That is not sustainable, nor is it affordable for Kiwis, and we want to make sure that those increases are appropriate for the services being delivered. We'll have more to say on that later this year. But again, we're working through that policy. We're being really thoughtful around the implications of that. We also need to grow and have growth as well within the housing stock, so we don't want that to be a barrier, and we're working our way through that. Well, I'll have more to say on that later this year. I've got a bit on my plate, as you know, but we're working pretty swiftly on that as well.
It's Treasury that has said that capping rates could impact council credit ratings, but you're going to push ahead. You're committed to rates caps anyway.
Yeah, look, Treasury's comments were in the context of making sure that the increases were sustainable. And that's absolutely the point of why we're looking at rates capping, because some of the increases by councils in New Zealand, as I said, were 20%. I mean, inflation sitting at just over 2% is a pretty big delta on those two numbers. That's not sustainable. That's why we're looking at that policy. And we need to protect New Zealand ratepayers. They need to make sure they're getting a fair deal as well from council.